Again, my name is Mike Olds, as you know already. My background is very different than most in the field because it's all over the map. While it's not on my resume and many people don't think it's relevant, I think it's absolutely relevant that all through college and grad school, I spent over 10 years in the restaurant business as a waiter, bartender, and restaurant manager. Um, there's a lot of skills there that I think are absolutely applicable. But whenever I got out of grad school with a master's in health psychology, with also a specialization in statistical analysis and research design, my first job out of grad school was actually as a medical writer. And although in retrospect I was really underqualified, I was also our statistician and these were for medical device trials. Much, much simpler stats than pharma. I mean, it was basically for the most part, simple t-test, ANOVAs, every now and then would do some regression analysis. But one of the clients that we worked for in my writing and editing capacity was the Society for Clinical Data Management. And this was in updating and writing new chapters for the GCDMP, which is Good Clinical Data Management Practices. So I was coordinating teams of subject matter experts from across the industry. I almost feel like I got another degree in data management doing that, getting all the information out of their heads onto paper. After I did this project for a couple of years, and then the owner of the very small company that I worked for in Austin, Texas, decided to retire whenever my son was 6 months old, and I found myself without a job. But because of all the connections that I had made on this project, I found a job 2 weeks later, and this was with Clinforce. It was the GSK outsource group. I was hired there as an eCRF developer with no experience doing that. Started as an eCRF developer. After 3 or 4 months where I was rocking that, they cross-trained me in extraction programming, knocked that out of the park. Then they had me do data management, then became a project manager, and then ended up managing all of the programmers and eCRF developers by the time I left there. Ultimately, I did go directly to GSK, and whenever I was hired, it was funny, it was for we call it CPSSO, it was basically early phase data management technical team. We handled all technical aspects for early phase data management, and I was hired to maintain the early phase standard eCRF template, but at that time we had a gap in that we had CROs delivering SDTM and nobody knew what to do with that because nobody knew SDTM at that point in time. So helped put together the entire framework for reviewing, ingesting, all of that, the SDTM for quality. One thing led to another. We ended up eventually bringing SDTM in-house instead of outsourcing it all. We built an SDTM team. I make no illusions that a large part of it was being in the right place at the right time, and that my boss, who was at that point in time, the head of data standards and SDTM delivery, while this was very, very new, abruptly left. I was a designated successor, and I got the job permanently. So I became the head of data standards and SDTM delivery at GSK. After a while, we split those out. I kept SDTM delivery, built that team up to over 100 people, while data standards branched out because I'd be the first to say they're not the same thing. They're closely related, but not quite the same thing. So I built that team up, but was really also kind of the technical arm of data strategy and management because I had the programmers. So while our main task was delivering SDTM, we also did a lot of other ad hoc things whenever data strategy and management, the wider organization, had technical needs or they needed technical consultation, they would come to us. And in fact, it's kind of funny, whenever I left GSK, I told everybody there, hey, if you ever have questions, you can call me 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now. Just don't give me any confidential information, and I'm happy to help you. Just yesterday, actually, somebody very high up called me, and they're like, we've got a technical question about handling inclusion-exclusion criteria. Do you mind? I'm like, no, of course I don't mind. And helped walk them through how that works and how the mapping works and how it should work.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've always found that people in data management always have really love what they do and are very happy to give knowledge for even when they don't get paid for it. It's a very common thing. Um, I wanted to maybe just clarify a few things. You obviously mentioned about SDTM and obviously other terms like ECRF, and maybe people listening might not know what they are. So I mean, I guess what could you give an idiot's guide to what they are and why they're so important?
Sure. Well, and I'll give an idiot's guide to the data flow
Perfect.
because, data flow is something that I consider myself very much an expert on because I have had so many roles through the years. I've touched the
Hmm.
data at almost every point. Like I said, I've done statistical analyses, I've submitted to the FDA. As a medical writer, I've written protocols. So you start off, you have a protocol. If you think of building a skyscraper, the protocol is your blueprint, essentially. This says this is the data we're going to collect, this is how we're going to analyze it, this is our blueprint for the clinical trial. So, based off of that blueprint, you design an ECRF, which is an electronic case report form. This is the data that are collected, entered into screens at sites. And this could be all kind of data. Usually, you're always going to have demographics, male, female, that sort of thing. You're going to have lab results, when they took a dose, what kind of medications they might have had, adverse events, etc. These days, things have changed a lot, though, and that about 70% of the data actually isn't even captured in the ECRF. About 70% of your data these days is coming from sources outside of your ECRF, such as labs. Sometimes you'll have wearables, a lot of biomarker data, which is very specialized labs, and these can be particularly challenging. You see this in more certain therapeutic areas like oncology and HIV are going to be very, very biomarker heavy. And these present unique challenges because some of these biomarkers might only be analyzed one place in the world, and it might literally be two people in a university basement lab, and you cannot get the data in the format that you want. You get the data in the format that their machine outputs. So you also have ePro or eCOA. ePro is electronic patient reported outcomes. eCOA is basically synonymous. This is where people might have a tablet or a phone and they're entering every day. How do you feel? Entering questionnaire data on that. And this is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Sometimes you also have what's called real world evidence data, which oftentimes comes from electronic health records. This also presents challenges because there's a lot of different EHR systems and they don't always come in the same format either. SDTM stands for Study Data Tabulation Model. So whenever all of these data are coming in these different formats, data management's task is to take all of these data, verify that the data are the data that are expected, clean the data, review the data, and say, wait, something doesn't look right here, or this is not the format that we expected, or this isn't as many records as we were expecting, or this is more records than we were expecting. Oh no, we have duplicate records. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the types of things that data management might find in the data, but they review all of this data, clean it, curate it to make sure that the data are collected as expected, or the data that are expected. Then after that, the role of SDTM is to take all of these different data from these different sources, different formats, and get it into a single standardized format. SDTM is required for regulatory submissions. So if you submit to the FDA or the PMDA, which is the Japanese equivalent, or MHRA, I mean, I go on most of the regulatory agencies, you have to have SDTM data. And so my department would take the data from all of these different sources, different formats, get it standardized into this one model. Then after that, the data are transformed again into ATOM. This is the analysis model. And so there are some further derivations that are done between SDTM and ATOM to make it more suitable for statistical analyses. Then from there, the ATOM data combined with your statistical analysis plan, they transform that into, some people call it TLS, some call it TFLs. It's tables, listings, and figures. This is really the meat of your study in terms of the outputs. What did you actually find? And then that is converted into your clinical study report that says, hey, here's what we found. The drug worked. Here's how well it worked. Or the drug didn't work. Here's what kind of adverse events we found with the trial. Here are the ones that we think may have been associated with that drug. Whenever you see commercials or you read the insert on a drug and it has that whole laundry list of things, that's where it comes from, is all of those adverse events. And, you know, I've had family members over the years, they say, I read something about this drug and it said, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, look, that might have happened in 5 people out of 100,000. It doesn't mean that's going to happen to you. It just means it's a possibility. Don't worry. It doesn't mean you're going to bleed from the eyes. There's a small possibility.
You know what though, because that's one that always makes me laugh. Is the American adverts, because we don't have them here. They hear like, hey, there's this drug and fine. And in American, it's like always someone dancing, and then it's like adverse effects, maybe bleeding from the anus, dying of this, and I'm like, Jesus.
I mean, personally, I think it should be illegal. I mean, to me, the physicians should be making that choice, not somebody watching television and saying, they're playing tennis and they're happy and they have what I have. Hey, doctor, give me that.
Yeah, we don't have them in the UK. They don't.
Oh, I know. It's a very American thing.
It's extremely American, but yeah, the adverts are just always hilarious. Just the dancing, happy, smiling, and then if you listen to every single adverse effect, you'd never take a drug again if you like, because every drug in America seems to kill you, or at least make you bleed from the eyes or the anus, or you bleed from somewhere, and it's always on the adverts.
But you're also very happy about it.
Very happy and dancing. Very happy and dancing. I was looking in. I was trying to see if there was anything maybe written or published online. And I came across something, I think, from your days at GSK, from the journal of I've got it here, the Society of Clinical Data Management. It was talking about the future of transformation from data management to data science, and where are we heading? And the one thing I made a note of and I wanted to ask you about is, it was data science is a method, and I guess. What that means, and I guess the comparison between, because data science is kind of like a new term that seemed to have appeared over the last 5-10 years. What's the difference, and what it means by data science as a method?
So, to me, the biggest difference is data science. You have to have a deeper understanding of the data. You need to have an understanding of at least some basic statistical concepts. Ideally, one should be able to do some basic programming, at a bare minimum, understand SQL or SQL. But, you know, it's kind of, and one of the challenges that I've seen over the years is that there are multiple groups reviewing the data. You have data, you know, like I said before, the role of data management is largely to take this data and make sure that it's fit for purpose, it's accurate, it's the data that you wanted, there aren't mistakes in the data. So you have data management doing this. You also have the CRAs going to the sites and reviewing the source materials to make sure the data are accurate. You have central monitors that are looking at the data oftentimes applying more statistical techniques to look at the data and make sure they're accurate. You have medical reviewers who are looking at the data from a medical perspective, and they're looking at it more from the perspective of, wait, this person presents like this, but they have that lab value. That doesn't make sense. And part of the goal of transitioning from data management to data science is to try to collapse some of these roles. For example, to perhaps combine data management with central monitoring. So instead of having two separate roles looking at the data, combine that into one role that understands the operational aspects of how that data comes in and flows through, which the central monitors don't necessarily have that. The data managers do. The central monitors, they don't understand how to design the ECRF, design the edit checks that are going to fire at the point of entry to try to make sure that the data are correct. So they don't have that expertise, but the data managers don't necessarily have the expertise of reviewing the data from a more statistical mindset. So part of the goal of this is to kind of collapse these roles into a single role where you have that operational understanding, but also that statistical high-level view of the data. And having multiple people reviewing the data, I mean, first of all, it's inefficient, obviously, but it also can cause confusion. And it can cause extra burden on the sites, because whenever you have multiple people reviewing the data, you might have 3 different roles issue a query on the exact same data point. And the sites are busy. The people that are answering these queries usually are nurses, and their primary role, their primary goal is to take care of the patients. This is their side job. And so, with clinical research, as a eCRF developer, one of the things that you always have to think about is balancing the need to capture the data that you need for the trial, but also to reduce the site burden. You don't want to overwork the sites because they're trying to take care of the patients, and the patients should come first, always, hard stop. So if you're getting the same query coming on the same data point repeatedly, that's just creating extra work for them. So I think that's a lot of what the impetus is behind this goal to transform from data management into data science, is to get a more profound understanding of the data and some of the statistical concepts, to collapse some roles, review the data more efficiently, and potentially cut down on the site burden at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess well, the biggest one going around at the minute is obviously AI and its involvement and what it's doing to multiple sectors. And I guess one, how has it affected you? How has it affected data management? And obviously, there's always those people that will say, "Oh, it means that job will be eliminated in 5 years' time, or 10 years, or whatever it might be." I don't think that's true, but obviously, what are your thoughts on it? And yeah,
honestly, I don't think AI is going to impact data management nearly as heavily as some other roles in the industry. As I said, I mean, I have held a lot of roles over the years. SDTM within GSK, for the longest time, it fell under data strategy and management. In many organizations, it falls under statistical programming. And in fact, part of the reason why I left GSK is my department was lifted and shifted from data strategy and management to statistical programming. And so my role was made redundant. But AI is going to impact statistical programming much, much, much faster and more heavily than data management. Because, I'm a huge fan of AI. I use it all the time myself. In fact, I mean, just for fun right now, I'm using an AI tool to build a mobile game for Android just because
nice.
that's fun.
Yeah.
people always ask, like, wait, how did you always do these technical roles? Your background is in psychology and statistics. It's like, well, I'm an OG gamer. I was building gaming desktops in the mid 90s and punching holes in firewalls and things like that. So I get AI. However, I'll be the first to say that AI isn't the solution for everything. Sometimes you need a hammer for a tool. Sometimes you need a screwdriver. And I've actually argued with people before about this isn't the right use case for AI. One example is SDTM auto mapping. I remember having a debate about this like 6 years ago. And I said, no, that's not a good use for AI because SDTM should be based off of standards and rules-based programming. Now, there's an exception. The exception is that real-world evidence data that I mentioned, where you're getting it from electronic health records, because then you can't necessarily define the structure and format that the data are coming in. That is a good use case for AI. But I remember whenever we were having that debate 6 years ago, back then I was saying, now what a brilliant use case for AI is, and that was even before these large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini and all these had hit the market, is having AI read your programming specifications and create the code for you. And we're seeing a lot of that right now, and that is taking off and going. I mean, again, I'm using an AI tool to create a mobile app. I don't know the programming language that this is being created. I mean, yes, I know how to program in a few languages, but not this one. But it's creating the code for me. So I do think that statistical programming is going to undergo a major, major transformation, which isn't to say that they're all going to be put out of work, but rather than actually writing code, a lot of what they will be doing is prompt engineering. But with data management, that is something where you still need a human in the loop today. Could it conceivably change in time? Sure. But I don't see it happening nearly as quickly. And part of the reason why is with data management, a lot of that role is coordinating between different groups, different people. Like I said, with a trial, you have data coming in from different sources. You have your ECRF data, and then you have data coming from this lab, this lab, this lab, this lab. I remember an oncology trial a few years back where we had 25 external data sources. So sure, conceivably AI could take the data from those sources and do the SDTM consolidation and get it standardized, which comes to the programming aspect of it. But the AI could not necessarily also know to reach out to this lab, this vendor, that vendor to say, hey, our timelines have changed. Can we get that transfer 2 weeks early? Or, hey, this transfer is late. So a lot of it is coordinating between these different entities, and that's something that AI is not necessarily great at today. Again, it might change in the future, but I don't see AI impacting DM nearly as much and as quickly as it will statistical programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it doesn't. And even because, like you said, I use it as well for a lot of it for marketing stuff because I'm just very terrible at that stuff. But it doesn't. It can present information. Go, here you go. It can't interpret the data. It can't, anything revolving around that until it gets to that point. Like a human needs to be at the wheel.
I was introduced to a tool a few months ago. I won't name it, but for creating, it's an AI tool for creating PowerPoints. Okay. Oh my God, it was amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I remember I fed in an outline that I created, a 7-page outline, and it gave me a beautiful 20-page PowerPoint that captured almost everything perfectly. All I did was, I was like, I want this font a little bit bigger. I did a little bit of tiny tweaking afterwards, but otherwise it was perfect. So, I mean, again, there, for the use cases for which it is the right tool, it's amazing. I think the key is to know where you need the hammer and where you need the screwdriver.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Sorry, excuse me. And I know obviously you're 15 plus years obviously in the field, if not more. I guess for people coming into data management, so maybe they're just finishing their masters or PhD and they want to get into drug development. I guess what would you recommend to get them maybe to where you are now, or to get their foot in the door? What are the sort of key things that they should be focusing on to become successful in this field?
Well, I mean, and this is a question that I've had from young people coming into the field many, many times. I mean, personally, I love hiring fresh college graduates. They're some of my favorite hires. And the first piece of advice that I will give each and every single one of them is be nice to everybody, because you never know when they might be interviewing you 10 years from now. It's a small industry. It is.
Yeah.
So I mean that's the first piece of advice is be nice and respectful to everybody. But another one, and this is one that I wish I had done whenever I was younger, is think long and hard about exactly where you want to go. What is your end goal, and work towards that. The stance that I always took was every manager that I always had, they would ask the question, well, what do you want to do next in your career? And I always gave the same answer. Hey, put me where I can make the most positive impact. Just please don't let me be bored. And so I wish that I had taken more control of the direction. Granted, I'm happy with where I've ended up, but I wish I had taken more control over it rather than simply saying, put me where I can make the most impact, don't let me get bored. Because honestly, there was a time or two where I was put somewhere where I was bored.
Yeah. Yeah, the burning bridges is one thing. That was something I was taught. It was, don't burn a bridge because you never know when you need it.
Yeah.
And if you get if you lose those, and connections are so important in every aspect of working well. That and like you said earlier, when they called you to ask for help on some technical issues, if that bridge was burnt, they wouldn't have asked you. You wouldn't have had that conversation, and vice versa in the future. I'm sure you can go back to them with questions, and it helps, and it costs you nothing to not be an arsehole. Basically, it costs nothing, and even if you
like
hate
helping
someone,
people.
if you hate someone, that's fine. Just don't burn the bridge and just hate them from afar, and maybe you can get something. Maybe you can get something off them in the future.
Sure.
But I guess is there obviously we mentioned a few there, oncology, there's gene therapy and like rare diseases is starting to become a bit more prominent as well. I guess is there an indication or therapeutic area that you see progressing further in the coming years, and maybe it would be a good place for someone like we said graduating if they should focus on like the oncology field or one of those areas? Do you see a prominent one in the future?
I would say immunotherapy and gene therapy. I mean, gene therapy, immunotherapy is huge. And gene therapy and immunotherapy, they have a lot in common in some ways. Both are essentially utilizing your body to fight disease. Just slightly different avenues for it. But, I mean, the most satisfying trial I ever worked on was gene therapy for metachromatic leukodystrophy. And I mean, I still get chills whenever I think about this. And it was literally a labor of love for all of us who worked on this trial, because it was a horrible, horrible, horrible genetic disease where these children would usually die by the age of 12. It's neurodegenerative. By the time they died, they wouldn't even be able to lift their head from their shoulder, and their bodies would give out. And this treatment would go in and literally change these children's DNA to overexpress the protein that they were lacking. And there was and by the way, this was approved, and so the treatment is out there now. Which, whenever all of us who worked on that trial found out, we were all in tears. But I remember there was a news story about it, and it showed a little girl who did die at the age of 12, and then it showed her little brother who got this treatment playing football at the age of 12, oh, wow. Which was amazing. And it makes me sad that some of these type of treatments are not given the amount of attention that they should, because they're not necessarily as profitable as some of the others, but the impact is incredible. I mean, for that little boy's family, I mean, he has a life now that he wouldn't have otherwise, which is incredible. Now, immunology, on the other hand, some of these immunotherapies, they have the potential to also be profitable for the companies and have much wider impacts, in particular in oncology, where, again, you're harnessing the body's immune system to fight cancer or other diseases. And, I mean, that is very, very powerful. But to me, those are the future of medicine. Gene therapy, there are some hurdles related to cost. That's the biggest challenge there. But it's getting better. And I think if some of those cost hurdles can be surmounted, gene therapy shows amazing promise. Again, I mean, the example of that trial and that treatment right there, I think, shows you how profoundly powerful it can be. But immunotherapy can be equally powerful as well.
Yeah. Is there a specific ailment or disease that you really want to work on? Or maybe that's your sort of like Moby Dick, I want to work on this in future?
Oncology is a big one. I mean, I don't think anybody out there hasn't known somebody who has been impacted. Autoimmune diseases are another one. So autoimmune diseases, and again, this gets into dealing with the body's immune system, because autoimmune diseases are exactly that. It's your immune system attacking yourself. And immunotherapies are all about getting to understand how your body's immune system works better and harnessing it. So, immunotherapy and how that can be harnessed to treat autoimmune diseases is something that I find fascinating. But first and foremost, oncology, just because it's such a huge problem. And whenever you hear, and I've heard this before, conspiracy theorists out there that go, "Oh, they already have a cure for cancer. They just don't want to." They're just like, okay, well, you obviously don't understand cancer. It's far more complicated than that. Yeah. It's not one disease. It's many, many, many diseases. But these immunotherapies and cell and gene therapies do have the opportunity to create customized treatments per patient that could potentially treat every single one of these different diseases.
Yeah, that'd be a good day once oncology's gone, cancer's gone. That'd be a hell of a day for medicine.
It would.
Do you think that would happen in sort of our lifetime, or do you think that's going to be?
I do. Well, definitely in my son's lifetime. Hopefully in my lifetime.
Yeah. Okay. And look, I guess one of the last things I wanted to ask you was obviously, like we said, we call the biometrics department the unloved child of the drug development world. And within biometrics, data management is definitely the unloved of the biometric space. So I guess, why do you do it? Because there's obviously quite a lot of other things, probably with your transferable skills, you could go into where one, you might get a bit more respect than you do probably now. You could still have an impact. One, maybe you get paid a little bit more. Why stick to what you do now?
Well, first of all, to be perfectly honest with you, James, I have known very few people who planned on going into data management. A lot of people in data management, like myself included, just ended up there. Now, why I'm in data management now? Because, again, my most recent roles had been more in the programming space. Part of the reason why today, I'm not going to say I would not consider programming roles. Certainly looking at those. But part of the reason why I'm primarily more interested in going back to data management is what I was mentioning before. AI is going to put programming out of work way before data management. I've seen that coming for a few years, and it's just gaining speed. If you look at what some of these AI models can do in terms of, straight out of the box, what they can do in terms of generating code for you, it's pretty amazing. If tomorrow I took over a programming department, the first thing I would do is start working with all of my programmers to convert them into prompt engineers, because that's where it's going to be in a few years. Granted, even with a data management department, I've already done this in the past. Like, hey, guys, embrace AI. You want to do meeting minutes? Don't you dare write that manually. Don't you dare. You have Teams do a transcript, you feed it into Copilot or whatever, boom, there's your meeting minutes. And I can go on and on about examples that I've given before to data managers on, hey, here's how you can properly utilize it. But today, that's one of the biggest reasons, honestly, why I said, programming or data management, I'm going to go back towards data management, because I've seen the writing on the wall in terms of which one has more staying power in today's world.
And do you think, because we work with quite a few clients that have started to merge the statistics and programming into sort of one role? Do you think with the AI coming in, that, and you talk about making them prompt engineers, that the statisticians will just absorb that role altogether and make it one?
I think it's quite possible. I think it's quite possible, because whenever it comes to programming, and I'm not the only person I've heard say this, and I couldn't tell you how many times I've said it over the years, if you can program in one language, you can program in any language, because logic is logic is logic. The rest is just syntax. Even without these AI tools, with Google, I could program something for you tomorrow in a language I have never used before, because I understand the logic, and I could Google the syntax. Having a background in statistics, I also know that understanding statistics requires a good understanding of logic as well. Because let's be honest, logic is nothing more than math. Logic is math, math is logic. That they really are. So I feel that a statistician is going to, by default, understand logic. So I think it is very feasible that the role of a statistician and a statistical programmer could become unified in the future. That said, a lot of the things that statisticians are doing today, you have to take some of that off their plate. But a lot of the things that they're doing today can also be potentially managed by AI in the future. Another thing that AI is good at is drafting documents. And so, for example, drafting a statistical analysis plan can take a long time. It's a very tedious process. And while, of course, you would still have to have a human in the loop, using an AI-driven tool to at least generate a first draft on that could cut the amount of time that they need considerably, which could free them up to do prompt engineering to actually generate that code.
Yeah, yeah. I use it to. I've been trying not to use it as much as, because I always see when people post on LinkedIn, you can always tell when it's been written by AI. It just always looks that way. But I try and use it to. I will write it in my own words and I'll just put it in there. Like, can you just clean it up and make it sound like I'm smarter than I am? And then that's what I stick to.
I should do more of that. Honestly, my weakest suit is self-marketing. I'm not good at that.
I'm not good at the marketing stuff. It's not my forte. I'm good
Nor
at
I.
speaking. I'm good at speaking to people. Terrible with technology.
Well, I'm great with technology. I'm just not
Yeah,
good
I'm
at
sure you.
marketing
Yeah, you
myself.
are. Yeah. What game are you making? You mentioned the game. What is it? Are you not allowed to say? Are you not allowed to
I can say.
Okay.
It's called While You Poop.
Oh, nice.
It's a game where you start off as either a kernel of corn, a jalapeno, or a piece of cheese,
Okay.
and you race through the digestive system,
No.
dodging monsters and obstacles, and it's a race to the toilet bowl. And I thought about this because when do people spend a lot of time on their smartphones?
On the toilet.
While they poop. So, so yes, I am designing it to take about the amount of time that it would take for somebody, and it's called While You Poop.
Very good.
That's why I laughed. So yeah, I can say I don't know if you want to edit it out or not, but yeah, that's what the game's going to be called.
Well, I look forward to playing it. Well, look, Mike, I really appreciate your time because that was really useful, and I think you give a really nice overview of data management. So thank you for your time.